But even today, every time natural evil breaks out in the form of a major natural disaster, some theologian, and these are theologians from almost every religious tradition, will come forward and say, this was God sending a warning, or this was God punishing people for, and usually for some reason it turns out to be homosexuality, but there are other things that people take the blame for in general. Now, we should know better by now. We live in an empirical age. We're in a data-rich world. And just as a small demonstration, I went on the internet and looked up the last 5 years of records with the National Weather Service on people killed by lightning strikes in America. Here are my results. 162 Americans died in the last 5 years from lightning strikes. They included a 14-year-old schoolgirl who was walking home when a storm overtook her, a cowboy in Idaho who was knocked out of the saddle while tending his herd, a police officer trying to rescue tornado victims in Joplin, Missouri, and a door-to-door missionary in Florida. Among all these 162 victims, there was exactly one inmate, Dolan Anderson of Ohio. His mother is now suing the prison system there. Rumor has it that their defense will be, it was an act of God. But we know better, don't we? After all, 99.4% of the victims of lightning strikes over the past 5 years, as far as we can tell, were good people, or in some cases, heroically good people, like that police officer in your handout who risked their lives. There is no moral pattern to these strikes, or indeed, if you look at the evidence in all other cases of so-called natural evil, there is no discernible moral pattern to the survival or death of anybody in a natural disaster. In fact, if you pose this in a scientific way, you have to entertain multiple hypotheses. Okay? So let's just take two. Let's take the religious position that bad things happen to people because they've done something wrong and this is God's vengeance, or that bad things happen to people because the world operates according to natural laws and chance. Which gives a better prediction? Well, in the case of lightning, it's clear that people who are in open spaces are at highest risk, regardless of whether they are saints or sinners. If you're in an open space during a storm, you're much more likely to be killed by lightning than if you're in an enclosed space. How about cancer? Regardless of whether people lead moral lives or immoral lives, the best predictor of whether they'll get cancer is what? Exposure earlier in life to carcinogens, cigarette smoke, toxins, radiation. Those are the things that predict whether a person will or won't get cancer. Tay-Sachs disease or any other genetic disorder. What predicts that? Is it the behavior of the parents or is it their genes? We know it's their genes. And finally, you know, sometimes there's a plane accident and somebody comes out of it and they're overwhelmed with a feeling of relief and happiness, and perhaps understandably they say, God saved my life today. God wanted me to live. But is that really how it works? Ask yourself that. Do people live or die in plane accidents according to whether they were good or they're destined to do something good? Well, if we ask ourselves the question in another way, it becomes clear. What is the altitude of the plane when it loses airworthiness? If you look at that, it becomes absolutely clear. If a plane breaks up at cruising altitude and there are no parachutes aboard, I don't care how good the people are, they're all going to die. If the plane loses its airworthiness a few hundred feet above a runway or a safe landing spot, chances are some of them will live. That's the way the world works.